Viewer discretion advised.
He had no boundaries. I mean, he was completely fearless.
I do whatever I want, sort of.
Chris Cornell had one of the most powerful voices in rock history.
Axl Rose said that you, Chris, were like the best vocalist around.
He helped define grunge with Soundgarden, then dismantled the band while at the top, defied expectations by fronting Audioslave, and kept reinventing himself as a solo artist.
You have this nice little balance, right? Band, solo record, band, some solo records, band, solo record.
But his story ended abruptly with a tragic death that left behind a lot of unanswered questions and a monumental legacy.
He lived his life. He would never have ever left this world.
This is the story of Chris Cornell.
I think it's, in a sense, sort of scary to just be born and live life.
Chris Cornell was born in Seattle on the 20th of July in 1964. His real name was Christopher John Boyle, and he grew up in a crowded household with 6 kids. His family mixed Irish, Catholic, and Jewish traditions, which meant conflicting rules, different expectations, and a lot of tension under one roof. As a child in the middle, Chris spent most of his time alone. And then one day he found old Beatles records in a neighbor's basement. And music became his best friend. For 2 years straight, he played them every day.
I was, I don't know how old, 8 or something. My neighbor, one of my neighbors, he had like 4 older brothers, and the oldest one had been kicked out of the house. And he just left all his records in the basement. And so I stole his Beatles records, and he had everything. Every reissue, every compilation. And I just grabbed him on a whim, and I just sat in my bedroom and started listening to him.
Cornell's teenage years were dark, not the poetic kind of dark, but the real clinical kind. He suffered from severe depression and crippling anxiety to the point of becoming a recluse that would barely leave his house.
Can affect anybody and everybody, and no one's immune to it, even the ones that you would think should have more help and support, maybe. Yeah.
By age 12, he was sneaking drinks and smoking pot. He even tried PCP at 14, a bad trip that rattled him so hard it left him with lasting panic attacks and exacerbated his agoraphobia.
I smoked pot at a really young age, and then after a couple of years I stopped. I think it opened the door to that.
The turning point came when his mother, desperate to pull her son back from the brink, bought him a snare drum. It was more than a gift, it was a lifeline. Banging on that drum kit gave Chris a way to transform his negative feelings into something creative. When Chris was 14, his parents split. The fallout hit fast. By 15, Chris dropped out of school and started taking whatever jobs he could find to help his mother keep the household running. He waited tables, washed dishes, even slung fish at a Seattle market to pay the bills, but nights were for rock and roll, and eventually he joined a local cover band where he met bassist Hiro Yamamoto.
The band was called the Shemps.
Yes.
Before long, Chris and Hiro got tired of playing in a cover band and started jamming together, trying to write their own music.
So Chris and Hiro moved in together, Chris playing drums, Hiro playing bass, and they would just kind of jam, just a rhythm section. And they would have guitarists come by. They'd try to find guitarists that might play with them to start the band. And they played with a lot of guitars, and none of them seemed to work. Everything just kept either not clicking or just being more traditional or conventional.
Eventually, they pulled in a guitarist friend, Kim Thale.
But they invite me down to go jam with them, the rhythm section. And the first day we're there, we write 3 songs that are like nothing I've ever done in a band before, like nothing Chris or Hero have done in a band before. It sounds distinctly unique. And we were laughing, we were giddy with how easy it was and how fun it was.
In 1984, Soundgarden was born in a dingy rehearsal space amid the rising ferment of Seattle's underground music scene. At first, Cornell was the drummer and Hero was the lead singer.
Your Hero sang, played bass, which was an easier deal, but Chris started singing more because he had lyrics. He'd say, I got lyrics that'll fit this idea. And sometimes there's a debate there, like Hero would say, I want to write lyrics for this, it's my riff, I have these lyrical ideas that I'm thinking, okay. And then Chris, and if that wasn't the case, if Hero just had a riff and it was developing by me adding guitar, Chris would say, I do have lyrics that'll fit that. And it's too difficult for him to sing in 5/4 or 7/4 and play drums.
Yeah.
It was kind of amazing that he was doing it, but it was just too difficult. It just got to the point where he's like, I can't do this. Let's either get a full-time singer or a full-time drummer.
Eventually, Scott Sundquist joined them as their full-time drummer so Chris could move to the front. The anxious kid who was once too afraid to leave his house was now about to become a fucking legendary rock star. By the mid-1980s, Seattle had developed a distinct underground music scene.
It's Seattle, it's a small place, and everyone has, they shared some interest and taste. So, our band might open up for Husker Du, and it did. Husker Du played 2 shows. Then the first night, the Melvins opened up for them. The next night, we did, We play shows with the Melvins. Another band that you might want to play with comes to town and you don't get the gig, but Green River does, and you're going to go there anyways to see Green River and see the band. So a lot of that was happening, but we realized that there's a lot of mutual support and cooperation.
We listened to a lot of bands, talked about what we liked about other bands. A lot of it is just the stuff and talking with other bands, like comparing, we talk with other bands, what are you guys into? And just that's part of that, the grunge thing was kind of this mutual, hey, we're heading this direction. Hey, check out what we're doing. And it was a little bit of bouncing ideas off each other in these kind of, not like where it's like, hey, we're going to do this, we're going to do that. But, we're seeing each other, what we're doing, and kind of getting ideas from each other.
Bands practiced in garages and played small, dark venues, supporting each other and creating a sound that was heavy, distorted, and emotionally charged. Critics later called it grunge. Soundgarden emerged from this environment but quickly set themselves apart. Their music combined the heaviness of Black Sabbath with the energy of punk and twisted everything with weird, lurching rhythms.
We wanted to create a band that we wanted to listen to, so that was the focus, and Hero was a huge part of that philosophy, just creating something that is your own thing. And Chris, of course, was right out of the gate, he just had a real sense of identity, as an artist and as a person. So it's nice to have fans and people in the music.
At the center was Chris Cornell's powerful vocal style, which gave the band a unique presence.
And again, a great singer. In the era of, why all those bands want to sound like Eddie Vedder? All those Pearl Jammy Cher sounding bands, right? It's because they all sang really low, right? So everybody could be like, hear me spoken, clear. You could never do that to Chris Cornell because he could sing. he was way up here. His pitch was higher. It made him stand out. Plus, a lot of the stuff came from very dark places in his life. And it is sad that sometimes your worst moments produce your best art. But there's lots to talk about. He hasn't done a lot of television.
Their first EP, Screaming Life, was released through Sub Pop, the same local label that would later launch Nirvana.
Hi, we're Mick Jagger, here to tell you about the new Soundgarden Screaming Life EP on Sub Pop Records. This record rocks. It comes complete with orange vinyl and a live-action cover, and it's available at your favorite record store. Buy this disc, but exercise extreme caution. Do not play on or around. Do not look at it sideways. Do not look through the hole. Do not...
Screaming Life sounded rough because it was. Harsh vocals, thick guitars, basic production. It wasn't meant to be pretty, it was meant to hit. The standout track, Hunted Down, showcased Cornell's early vocal power, like a caged animal trying to bust out of the booth.
The early Soundgarden is very screamy, and his voice is very raw.
And it's a little bit
you know, he did that kind, and you know, it took. He suddenly sort of went.
They followed it with Fop, a bizarre detour that included a cover of the Ohio Players' song of the same name. It confused people, but proved they weren't afraid to mess with expectations. At a time when most rock bands were still trying to get on MTV, Soundgarden was busy figuring out how weird they could get and still melt your face.
Well, I think what worked was all of our receptiveness to each other's ideas, and that nobody had a set. I think the only set idea of what we should be is to not be set, and to be able to take in new information. And we were constantly turning each other on to bands, and it went beyond that. We turned each other on to books and film. It's like, oh, I just saw this, you should check it out.
Yeah. Then came their full-length debut, Ultra Mega OK, dropped via SST Records, the legendary indie label that had championed Black Flag. You could tell this was a band still sorting out its identity, but the potential was unmistakable. The album wasn't grunge perfected, it was grunge in the petri dish, bubbling and morphing.
This record was a lot of fun to listen to. I would say way more experimental and varied with its sound than I expected. They still have that awesome grunge quality too, but they blend it with so many different styles.
Tracks like Beyond the Wheel and Flower channeled Sabbath-level doom with post-punk weirdness. Cornell's vocals were already evolving from punky shouts to operatic howls.
Listen to that. Like, he's got this just amazing voice. It was pretty obvious right off the bat. And he was still coming into himself, trying to figure out what his voice was at that time. So it was kind of, I got to see Chris in a very young age, developing kind of where he would become, where he was going. So it's very, very interesting.
The album got them a Grammy nomination for Best Metal Performance, which seemed surreal for a band who still felt like outsiders at that point.
Where were you guys when you found out that you were nominated for a Grammy?
Asleep on a bus.
Yeah, in Ottawa.
Uh-huh. And what was your reaction like?
Go back to sleep. Why don't you wake me up?
Yeah.
It's real easy.
Well, sleep is a hard thing to come by. And, Grammy nominations, dime a dozen, so.
Oh, yeah.
We just went right back to sleep. And that's why we look so good now, because we got a lot of rest.
Did you call your parents?
I did. I called Kim's parents. And they're real proud. Parents really like that sort of thing,
Yeah, those are the things you tell them.
Well, they can call.
Still, the band wasn't thrilled with how the album sounded. The production was thin and it didn't quite reflect their live presence. But it was still a crucial stepping stone. It introduced Soundgarden to the wider world, and more importantly, it hinted at what was coming.
Overall, all the songs on offer on this album aren't bad. They're definitely in that raw essence of Soundgarden sound, and I think that there is a lot of potential within it. But, of course, when you listen to these, it's going to be sitting a bit lower in the ranks compared to what is coming up.
When Louder Than Love came out in 1989, Soundgarden entered a new phase. Scott Sundquist had left the band to focus on his family, and Matt Cameron stepped in as the full-time drummer.
My presence in the band enabled him to write more adventurous music. So,
around the same time, the band became the first act from the Seattle scene to sign with a major label, years before alternative rock broke into the mainstream. The sound reflected that shift. Thick, distorted guitars, slow, crushing riffs. The music felt heavier and more deliberate, like machines grinding forward with no intention of stopping. Songs like Gun and Get on the Snake had a nihilistic swagger, with riffs that lumbered like dying machinery and lyrics that were sometimes goofy, sometimes darkly poetic, and sometimes both. Cornell's voice was sharper, more commanding. You could hear the band locking in around him, growing into their sound like wolves learning to hunt.
I was reading an interview on Axl Rose, who said that you, Chris, were like the best vocalist around.
Yeah, he sort of said that.
So I guess Guns are a big fan of you guys?
Axl seems to be. Yeah. You know,
the album cracked the Billboard 200 and started turning heads beyond Seattle. They toured hard. Word spread. The grunge wave was still a couple years from cresting, but Soundgarden had already built their surfboard. This was the moment they became more than just another weird band from the Northwest. They weren't imitating anyone. They weren't trying to be commercial. They were playing loud, twisted, intelligent music, and the world was finally starting to pay attention. However, around this time, Hero left the band.
I started feeling like my voice was not being heard as to where we were going. A lot of this is, the direction of the whole band. And so when you kind of feel like, hey, they want to go this way, I'm not necessarily sure I want to go that way. For me, it was understanding that this is a business and we're really an entity. We're no longer just a band. We're kind of we're a commodity. And I'm back here, I'm doing it again, but at the time, maybe I wasn't quite prepared for that, and I felt like we were losing control of what we were as a band. But to their credit, Soundgarden did what they wanted to for the rest of their careers. And so for me, I'm really happy that they were able to continue with their own power like that.
Then came Badmotorfinger, now with new bassist Ben Shepherd. Cornell's voice on tracks like Jesus Christ Pose and Outshined roared like a jet engine, and suddenly the band found themselves in heavy rotation on MTV and radio.
Not only one of the best albums of the heyday of grunge, but also at the same number of tracks and roughly the same length, I've argued that start to finish it may even be stronger than Metallica's Black Album that dropped this same year. Yeah, I'm going to put this one at perfection. Excellent album, must listen.
Soundgarden had gotten so big that their music was no longer just on the radio. It was everywhere. Even inside video games. I mean, did you ever play Road Rash? Then you already know that game hit harder because Soundgarden was part of it. That was the moment you realized how massive they had become. From grimy Seattle clubs to living rooms and consoles around the world. But in the thick of this success, tragedy struck the Seattle music family. Cornell's close friend, Andrew Wood of Mother Love Bone, died from an overdose in 1990. In grief, Chris channeled his pain into a one-off side project called Temple of the Dog, teaming up with Wood's roommates, who would soon form Pearl Jam, to record a heartfelt tribute album. Notably, the album featured Hunger Strike, with Eddie Vedder trading vocals with Cornell. Temple of the Dog became a cult classic, cementing Cornell's stature among his Seattle peers as both a leader and a collaborator in the grunge explosion. But they wouldn't release any other album after that.
It took a couple of weeks to do it, and then it was very special, and it surrounded kind of a subject that was sort of important to us, being that it was a tribute to our friend that died, and I'm not sure if necessarily would have felt natural to like, at least, to go back and write other songs.
Back with Soundgarden, Cornell kept climbing. In 1994, the band dropped Super Unknown, their masterpiece and commercial breakthrough. It debuted at #1 on Billboard and produced generation-defining singles.
Now, I could tell you honestly, Let Me Drown, My Way, Fell on Black Days, Super Unknown, Head Down, Black Hole, Sat Down, Limo Wreck. Listen, there's 10 fucking jams on this motherfucker. And this is one of those albums that I was in the car playing it on the road, and like I would only listen to like 2 songs. Then I'm like, the one song would go, and I'd be doing something. I'm like, fuck, that's a good song. That's what this album is about.
But it was a surprise, I think, that it was as big as it was.
9 million copies sold, if I remember correctly, around the world.
Something like that. Yeah, 8. I think 8 or 9, something. And it was actually...
Suddenly, the surreal psychedelic video for Black Hole Sun was everywhere.
Black Hole Sun, for example, was a surprise when I think about it lyrically, especially that became a hit song. So I think we were fortunate in that we made this album that was kind of redefining the band and pushing the boundaries right at the time when people we had everyone's attention.
Yeah, everyone was
so
looking
they
for that.
listened.
At this peak, Cornell was a bona fide rock god, shirtless, wild-haired, hitting high notes that sent chills down your spine. And in the era of flannel and nihilism, Cornell stood out as a golden-throated titan, as if some 70s hard rock spirit had possessed a grunge kid's body. Soundgarden were now global stars touring the world, their songs blaring from car stereos and dorm rooms everywhere. But success always sends the bill later. The pressure to follow up Bad Motorfinger was brutal. To regain control and try to silence the outside pressure, the band self-produced Down on the Upside. Never the Machine Forever sounded like old Soundgarden, but much of the album moved inward. More melody, stranger textures, darker moods. It was a clear signal that Cornell was changing. His songwriting had become more personal and conflicted. Burden in My Hand and Blow Up the Outside World were catchy but quietly devastating. In a way, the words kind of felt unfinished, like thoughts still forming. Thing is, while the rest of the band preferred a heavier direction, Cornell was clearly ready to move on creatively. And after years of non-stop work, the band's chemistry was wearing thin. The unity that once felt natural had become professional, careful, and strained. There was also the creeping disillusionment with the industry itself.
Kurt Cobain was the lead singer of the group Nirvana. Their albums were bestsellers, their songs filled with images of despair and violence. One lyric, "The sun is gone, but I have a light, the day is done, but I'm having fun." And then this morning, his body found at home, another casualty of success. Here's ABC's Tom Foreman.
The moment that truly soured everything happened in April 1994, when Kurt Cobain was found dead. Even if he never wanted that role, Cobain was seen as the heart of grunge. So after his death, the scene felt different. So by 1996, when Soundgarden released Down on the Upside, grunge was no longer the underground rebellion it once was. The major labels had strip-mined the Seattle sound into a marketing gimmick, and the charts were flooded with grunge-light imitators. Cornell and company were watching their revolution get commodified in real time, and it wore them down. which takes us to April 1997, when the strain finally snapped.
During the last but one song, it was called Slaves and Bulldozers, playing the song, and Ben Shepherd's like, you know what? This. And he took his bass off and he went, whoa, he threw it up in the air and walked off, and he goes, boom, 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 boom. Kim Thayil goes, well, if he's leaving, I'm leaving. And now you got Chris Cornell's out front singing, and all you got is they walk off. There's a whole fight now in the dressing room. I'm outside. There's a fight going on. Chris and the drummer
Matt Cameron.
Matt was never part of all the lunacy, right? They walk out and they do My Wave with an acoustic guitar and drums, and that was the ignominious, sad end of Soundgarden.
With the grunge period of the early 90s slowly receding into rock history, Soundgarden, the metal-edged Seattle band, called it quits this week after 12 years and one chart-topping album.
A short press release later announced the band's breakup.
There wasn't some sort of a philosophical conflict. It was more of a day-to-day life becomes less enjoyable. And I also think that because of what we had created, for me, there's like this preservationist attitude towards it. Like, if this is going to be icky, then let's just not do it, because up to that point, we hadn't done anything, we hadn't made any mistakes with our music.
From the outside, it didn't make sense. They had everything. Gold records, critical acclaim, packed venues. But for Chris especially, the band had become a box he didn't want to be trapped in.
Like, Chris was smart, and you could tell, and he was poetic.
Chris had more to say than distorted guitars could allow. He needed space to stretch out, to explore the softer and weirder parts of his troubled artistic identity.
Though it seems like a weird time for a band to split up, we'd been a band since 1984. And it wasn't until the early 90s that we had reached a large audience. So it was fairly recent that the audience in the size that we had even knew about us. But it wasn't fairly recent that we were a band making records, recording and touring, you know, and
The end of Soundgarden was a professional breakup, but for Chris, it triggered a personal unraveling. After the band split, he spiraled into a black period where he was drinking heavily.
Alcohol is like the only drug that actually affects your entire brain. It would do this one thing that's good, I suppose, for someone in terms of the expressionism, which is it kind of relieves you of your fear and you become less inhibited. But then for me, for some reason, whatever the door is that needs to open to where it becomes almost like I'm the conduit to something else. It's not just a construct that doesn't open up. I think alcohol just sort of dumbs that, whatever that is, down or shuts that down. And other drugs too. And then nothing ever made me more inspired or more able or capable as a songwriter.
In 1999, he released a solo album pointedly titled Euphoria Morning, a beautiful, brooding record drenched in melancholy and rich melody.
Is it a different feeling to be completely on your own on the eve of something like this?
Yeah, I'm sure it has to be.
Yeah.
I'm not sure if I know exactly what is different about it. I mean, in a sense, everything kind of feels smaller, whether it's expectations or whether it's just the scope of everything, venues you're playing or type of press you're doing. It feels different.
The album earned critical praise and aged very well. Chris does about every octave range possible.
The one thing about Chris's vocals and his lyrics, there's a spookiness to them, and there's a sort of a darker side to them.
The song structure, the order of tracks, the poetic strong lyrics and motifs, it's truly a brilliant record. But it had modest sales. Perhaps people were expecting acoustic Soundgarden, and what they got instead was far more in-depth and personal.
How about some of the specific songs on this, like Can't Change Me? What was the genesis of that, and how did that transform as you recorded it?
That one was pretty straightforward. I did a demo of it at home. It's almost exactly like the record. I mean, there's keyboards, and the chorus of the song kind of transformed on the record, but the basic idea is really similar. That's one of those kind of 15-minute songs where I started getting the idea musically, and then the lyrics were sort of integral, like just the melody started to come with the lyrics already attached, so the whole thing just kind of rolled out and simple, quick. Which are, a lot of people say those are the best songs, but the reason why is if you don't labor over anything, you're not tired of it yet, so it seems like the best song.
Around that time, his marriage to his first wife, Susan Silver, was disintegrating. It probably didn't help that she used to be the manager of Soundgarden.
The manager of Soundgarden was the wife of Chris Cornell, already a recipe for disaster. Yeah. They were disintegrating their marriage.
Cornell was guzzling alcohol, numbing out the rising tide of depression that had haunted him since childhood.
If I had any regrets about was just that I drank a lot.
And just like in his childhood, it was music once again that saved him. The remaining members of Rage Against the Machine, guitarist Tom Morello, bassist Tim Comerford, drummer Brad Wilk, were searching for a singer after their own vocalist Zach De La Rocha quit in 2000. Rage had been one of the most politically incendiary bands of the 90s, fusing metal with hip-hop and fronted by De La Rocha's firebrand poetry. Their sound was militant and unrelenting. Albums like Evil Empire and The Battle of Los Angeles were battle cries, and their concerts often felt more like uprisings than performances. But the band was volatile. Creative tensions simmered constantly, especially between Zach and the rest of the band, who struggled to stay aligned with his uncompromising political vision. So eventually Zach walked out, citing a breakdown in decision-making and direction, and the remaining trio were left looking for a new frontman. Enter Cornell, invited for a jam by producer Rick Rubin.
When Rage broke up was we went over to Rick Rubin's house. Tim and Brad and I were like, what are we going to do? And we listened to Bad Motorfinger by Soundgarden a lot. And we said, maybe we should talk to that dude.
What a voice.
I don't know.
What a
voice.
On paper, it sounded ridiculous. The militant engine of Rage Against the Machine paired with the wounded soul of Cornell should not have worked. But it worked instantly. They formed a supergroup called Audioslave, and suddenly Chris had a focus again. But recording their debut album was chaos. Cornell was so messed up on alcohol and prescription drugs that he had to disappear into rehab partway through production. And at some point, they even had to pull him out just to film a music video.
The weirdest sort of instant was making the video for Cochise, which was the first video that we made. I happened to be in rehab at the time. So they put me in this car from rehab and drove me to the set and put me on top of the scaffolding, and there I'm seeing them, and they're all kind of wearing things you wear for a video shoot. And I'm saying hi, and then we start doing it.
Their self-titled album dropped in late 2002.
When Audioslave formed and we were actually making the first album, there were a whole lot of people who were Rage fans or people who were Soundgarden fans that were just doing this and, you know, the horrible idea and corporate sellout crap and that kind of thing. And I actually sort of stood and said, we're not going to make any statement or any response. We're just going to let the music come out there and live, and that's our answer.
The album went triple platinum, fueled by Like a Stone, an eerie emotional track that showed Cornell's voice hadn't lost a shred of its power.
like the music of Rage Against the Machine is James Brown bass. It all comes around to the one. It's like it's the same driving beat and the same driving rhythm that comes around because it's rapping and it's like the excellent punk rock vocals of Zach. With Chris, in order to allow him to shine, there had to be this kind of harmonic counterpoint. So it really, like that song Like a Stone was, it's a few simple chords, but allows Chris's beautiful voice to soar.
More than anything, this album represents endurance. Cornell pushed through addiction, personal collapse, and uncertainty, and still delivered something meaningful.
And the whole first Audioslave record was really out of a really bad place. But because I came out of that bad place, there's sort of a triumphant approach to being able to sing it now. And also there's some sort of a positive attitude that comes out of the fact that look at how lucky I am that I get to express those things in music and then go out there and play it for other people, because what ends up happening is that people will come up to me when I meet them wherever it might be, in a restaurant, at a show, whatever, and they will point out those specific songs, the ones like you might be talking about, and say, this helped me through a really difficult time, simply because they identified with it.
Well, now, and as you've grown and you've moved on to do
On 2005's Out of Exile, Audioslave's second album, Cornell got deeply personal in his lyrics, openly drawing on the positive changes in his life since getting clean. Songs like Be Yourself carried an uplifting message, quite unlike the nihilism of grunge's heyday. Critics noted Cornell's vocals were stronger than ever, crediting his newfound sobriety for the extra oomph. He himself had quit smoking and drinking, and it was as if his voice got a second wind, rich and explosive again.
This next song is called Like a Stone.
Audioslave even made history by becoming the first American rock band to play an open-air concert in Cuba, playing to 70,000 fans in 2005, a symbolic crossing of borders that mirrored Cornell's own crossing into a new life. Chris seemed to have outrun the ghosts nipping at his heels. He remarried in 2004 and started a new family. Fatherhood in particular would percolate into his art.
I think being a father probably does something to that.
Yeah.
Because it's different. It's like when you're a person of any age writing song lyrics, especially rock lyrics, there's this perspective of, and I certainly had it. Like, who cares? I don't give a damn about anything. If somebody comes in and shoots me, or if I get hit by a bus, so what? If there's nuclear war, and I get blown up, it's the same thing as getting hit by a bus to me. I die either way, so who cares? And then when you have kids, suddenly, wow, it's not like that. If I get hit by a bus, there are consequences for other people that I'm responsible for, and all of that. And that started to show up, I think, a lot in Audioslave lyrics, where suddenly there was kind of these sort of thoughts that were sort of wider than the scope or perspective that I had previously. If I was in a house that was burning, I could just jump out the window, and I'm not afraid to jump out of a window. I've done it. I've jumped out of like a 10-story window onto a tree. So what? And now all of a sudden it's this is a few years ago. It's like I'm not in that position anymore. Now, if the house is on fire, I have to grab my wife. I have to grab my kids. I have to and that, I think, without doing it consciously, started to show up in lyrics, and is probably something also that you can interpret as being sort of more spiritually pointed.
I know exactly what you're saying.
Audioslave third album, Revelations, served as both a stylistic evolution and unknowingly their swan song. The band leaned hard into funk, soul, and 70s style rock, with Morello experimenting more openly and Cornell tapping into a deeper vocal pocket on tracks like One and the Same and Original Fire. It was a bold pivot, less stadium-shaking riffs and more groove-based nuance.
There's been times in my career when I've thought, in terms of sitting and writing songs, like, God, it would be really helpful to the live show if we had something that felt like X. For the most part, though, we write songs kind of one song at a time, and it's based on the inspiration and the idea. We are the furthest that you can get from a band that's conceptually driven. I don't think we've ever had a meeting where we sat down and said, let's discuss the direction of the new album. What would we all like it to be? Never once have we done that.
But critics were split. Some praised the confidence and cohesion, calling it their most musically mature album. Others missed the rawness of their earlier work, claiming the soul influences diluted the band's punch. Commercially, it debuted strong, but didn't have the staying power of their previous releases. What the album didn't say out loud was that behind the scenes, Chris was feeling restless again.
The idea of being in a band where it is like a group of people, like 4 or 5 people that you agree to be in a band with and make consecutive albums, and you're working sort of, democratically on the way the bands work. I don't really think that that's something that I'm too attracted to, just because I'm able to produce so much music and perform so much, and I'm just like really having a better time on my own in terms of just being able to be focused on music all the time.
So in early 2007, Cornell announced his departure from the band, citing irresolvable personality conflicts. And just like that, Audioslave was done. In 2007, Cornell released Carry On, and it was a frustrating listen. Not because the songs were bad, but because the album sounded lifeless. The mix is bone dry, flat, and sterile, even. It's like the sound itself has no depth. That is the real tragedy, because the songwriting is actually good. No Such Thing is one of Cornell's strongest solo tracks, driven by heavy, philosophical lyrics. Poison Eye could easily sit on a Soundgarden record, and his cover of Billie Jean was a smart twist, changing the time signature while keeping the core intact. Cornell's voice had aged, but his control was unreal, and he shows total command across his range. And yet the album suffers from a terrible mix that makes it sound soulless. In 2009, Cornell followed with Scream, an album produced by Timbaland, full of electronic beats and funky crooning. Most fans felt betrayed as they perceived it as being too pop. Critics mocked it, and metal magazines dismissed it outright.
What's the fallout going to be like? Because some people are going to be mad. Even Timbaland said it the first day we sat down. He said, people going to be mad. I'm like, yeah, I know.
Like your record label.
And then I thought, I sort of thought past that, because I've been through that before.
Cornell never backed down. To him, Scream was a bold experiment, not a mistake. He believed in it, and he stood by it completely.
And it's basically sort of a polarizing album, which I actually think is a really good thing, because that sort of going down the middle, like I listen to this album, it's okay. Yeah. It's like I absolutely hate it. I think if somebody is deciding that they absolutely hate this album right now already, and it just came out, then they probably didn't really listen to it, or they didn't listen to it a few times, or they listen to it with the prejudice of
expecting old, Soundgarden, Audioslave, whatever.
Or just wanting to hate it. Some people just want to, they listen to music and are fans of music, like they wear certain clothes, and it's like, I'm not going to listen to this. And at the end of the day, too, it's okay. Everyone's allowed to like or dislike music. There's a lot of music I hate. There's a lot of music I don't know
This constant reinvention defined Chris. He consistently chose reinvention over comfort, even when it meant alienating part of his audience.
I do whatever I want, sort of.
Cornell's career was led by curiosity and gut instinct.
He had no boundaries when it came to writing music and doing whatever he wanted. If he wanted to try a genre, he'd do it. I mean, he was completely fearless. And for me, watching that over the years, I was so inspired by that.
It confounded some fans, but it also kept his artistry alive and unpredictable.
Well, like, I'm the right brain, just sort of like head in the clouds, artistic type guy that wants to be able to be eccentric and inconsistent and all of the things that, you would expect from that.
Cornell reunited with Soundgarden in 2010 after over a decade apart, a move that surprised fans and insiders alike. The split in '97 had seemed final, but time and maturity had dulled old tensions. Reconnecting wasn't about chasing nostalgia or cashing in. It was about unfinished business and about reclaiming something essential, their legacy.
We were meeting, talking about just kind of getting back into taking responsibility for the legacy of the band and doing some re-releases and starting a website again, starting up our fan club again, and just kind of trying to get a new generation of rock fans to know about what we did. And once we were in those rooms and hanging out, one thing led to another. Like, we should do like a surprise show and play 5 songs, and then we should do a real show, and then we could do a tour. And once we were in a room playing music, it led to writing songs. It was all sort of natural.
At first, they started slowly by playing a few festivals and basically testing the waters. But these weren't kids anymore. They were seasoned musicians who'd been through hell and come back with scars and perspective.
Being able to have Soundgarden back together again at this point in my life is a hugely fulfilling thing.
Cornell also leaned into softness during this time. He wasn't just returning to his roots, he was peeling back layers. In 2011, he released Songbook, a live acoustic album recorded during a solo tour that stripped everything down to the core. Voice and guitar. No walls of distortion, no pounding drums, just Cornell alone with the melodies. He played Soundgarden cuts, solo material, covers of everything from Zeppelin to Lennon, all reimagined in quiet, intimate arrangements. Songbook revealed the depth of his catalog and his soul. It showed how much of his power came not from volume, but vulnerability. The dualism between Soundgarden's reunion and Cornell's introspective solo work made the 2010s feel like coming full circle. Finally, he didn't have to choose between heaviness and melody, or between past and future. He was folding them into one another, threading his history into a fuller picture. And for the first time in a long while, it seemed like he was finally at peace and content with his career. In 2012, Soundgarden released King Animal. It didn't dominate the charts, but it proved they still had something to say. It also allowed the band to tour globally to adoring crowds. Cornell alternated Soundgarden with his solo touring, where he'd lay his soul bare on acoustic sets, and it truly looked like a creative renaissance for him. In 2015, he even found the energy for one more solo album, Higher Truth. Easily the best batch of songs he put out since Super Unknown. Any of them could work as a Soundgarden song with heavy guitars added, but they do not need that. In this stripped-down form, the focus is clear. It is all about Cornell's voice, and it carries everything. He had survived the 90s while so many of his contemporaries had fallen. And then suddenly tragedy struck.
Legendary Seattle grunge rocker Chris Cornell has died.
Cornell was the frontman for Soundgarden. CBS 2's Craig Herrera is live this morning with the details. Craig?
On May 17th, 2017, Chris Cornell performed a sold-out show with Soundgarden at Detroit's Fox Theater. A high-energy concert that would tragically be his last. After the show, Cornell returned to his suite at the MGM Grand Detroit Hotel and called his wife Vicky on the phone. She later told police that Cornell was slurring his words, repeatedly saying he was tired, and confessed he may have taken an extra Ativan or two on top of his prescribed dose.
First thing he said to me when he called me that night was the ringing in my ears. I couldn't stop the ringing. He was slurring his speech a lot. He was off pitch. He forgot words.
Alarmed by his groggy, incoherent demeanor, Vicky immediately reached out to Chris's bodyguard.
I called the security guard and I said to him, "You need to go to his room."
Cornell's bodyguard immediately went to the room. Finding the main door latched from the inside, he called hotel security for assistance, but they refused to unlock the door since the room was registered to Cornell.
And in those reports, we also learned that the bodyguard spent precious time going back to his room asking security to come open Cornell's hotel room, but they refused because it wasn't his room.
So the bodyguard forced the door open himself. According to the police report, Cornell was discovered lying on his back and had a red exercise resistance band around his neck.
What is the address of the emergency?
1777 3rd Street, the MGM Casino. I have a non-responsive guest in a hotel. It's going to be a 50-year-old male inside of room 1136.
Paramedics arrived shortly afterward and attempted resuscitation efforts, but to no avail. Tragically, Cornell was pronounced dead at the scene at approximately 1:30 a.m. on May 18, 2017, and he was 52 years old. The Wayne County Medical Examiner's Office officially concluded that Cornell had taken his own life. The autopsy noted that he had asphyxiated with an exercise band around his neck, and there were no signs of foul play in the room. The report also revealed several prescription and over-the-counter drugs in Cornell's body at the time of death. These included anti-anxiety, sedatives, headache medications, decongestants, and caffeine. Additionally, just to be fully comprehensive, naloxone was also present, which was reportedly administered by the paramedics on the scene in an attempt to counter any potential opiate overdose. Importantly, no illegal drugs were found in his system.
The photos that police took around the entire room, you could see there were 3 prescription bottles in the room. One was for prednisone. Another was an anti-anxiety pill. It was sort of the generic Ativan. And what was the other one, Brad? The
The one that was for if you had acid reflux.
It was acid reflux.
Yeah, and kind of
Cornell's toxicology results indicated he had taken 4 Ativan tablets in a short span, which is above the recommended dosage.
Which somebody with his addiction history, he's a man with opiate addiction history who's been deeply involved in recovery. He should never get that medication. Really? Never, ever, ever, ever. I mean, if he needed it for a couple of days or something, okay, but to walk out with a prescription for that is activating his disease for sure. I guarantee you.
It's important to note that Ativan, in rare cases, can cause disorientation, impaired judgment, and even a spike in intrusive or dangerous thoughts as a side effect.
He could make any decisions because of the level of impairment.
Vicky pointed out that Cornell had been sober for years and had no intention of dying, suggesting that an adverse reaction to medication might have triggered dark thoughts that he would not have had in a clear state of mind.
He lived his life. He would never have ever left this world.
But it appears that Chris was in some kind of a delusional state and just took his life, which is really tragic.
On May 26, 2017, Cornell was laid to rest at Hollywood Forever Cemetery, surrounded by family and close friends. Among those present was Chester Bennington, who honored Cornell with a heartbreaking emotional tribute by singing Hallelujah.
Chris was such a beautiful guy, man. He was the sweetest person. He was so talented. He had so much to offer that it was a real shock to hear that he had gone.
A year later, a life-size bronze statue of Chris Cornell was unveiled in Seattle by his family, symbolizing his permanent legacy in the city's music history.
But before knowing Chris as a friend, I knew Chris as a fan, like most of you. I've been a huge fan of his music, his band, Soundgarden, and his voice. His voice was always honest, caring, and real. It's difficult to successfully lie through art. The man himself was always caring, honest, and real.
Despite the official rulings, rumors spread suggesting there was more to the story. One theory posited that Cornell and later Bennington and Avicii were victims of a sinister cover-up from a secret organization they were allegedly working to expose. Detroit police stated they triple-checked the case and found nothing amiss, urging people not to be taken in by speculation beyond the evidence. In late 2018, Cornell's family filed a lawsuit against his doctor, alleging that he overprescribed Ativan and other medications without proper oversight, which the family believes clouded Cornell's judgment and contributed to his death.
Approximately a year before he died, he was prescribed a benzodiazepine to help him sleep. And it was because he had torn his shoulder. The pain in the shoulder was waking him up at night, and it was keeping him up. In retrospect, I've learned that it's not supposed to be given to anybody who's in recovery. And if you have to give it, they have to be closely monitored, and it should not be given for more than 2 to 3 weeks.
That lawsuit was settled out of court without a definitive public conclusion on the doctor's liability. Today, most fans and friends accept the painful truth that Cornell took his own life while in a compromised state, and they remember him with love, focusing on the music and kindness he gave to the world. Others have gravitated toward alternative explanations, embracing non-confirmed theories about secret organizations. Though open questions and theories may persist, the enduring truth is the loss felt by millions.
He's one of those charismatic guys that would walk into the studio, and I just say, like, there's a rock star. You know, he looked like a rock star, he sang like a rock star, but he also had a lot of humility. He was a humble man.
Cornell's life embodied the idea that you can have a voice that moves millions, yet still feel alone in a crowd.
I mean, literally the piece of advice that my dad gave me consistently throughout my life is do something because you love it and for literally no other reason. Like, you will not achieve real success and fulfillment if you're not doing something because you love it.
Just as Cobain became an unwitting symbol for the tortured artist, Cornell's legacy has a similar aura, but also with a layer of hope, because he showed it was possible to fight back and find moments of joy. Even if the fight is ongoing and the outcome uncertain.